everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today I have with me Bryan Farris. Welcome to the show, Bryan. It's great to have you here. And just before we have a chat, I'm just going to go a little bit through his story. He's an accomplished entrepreneur. He did a degree in science in Berkeley. He's a full-stack developer and expert strategist with a decade of prowess in shaping groundbreaking web and mobile apps. And as president and CEO of Goldfish, he oversees a skilled team that offers a comprehensive array of end-to-end solutions. They've trademarked a motivation-driven design process. They are able to offer business strategy consulting, mobile web development, project management, and the list goes on. They're a go-to partner for clients seeking 360-degree consulting to successfully launch products. So Bryan's proficiency encompasses software programming coupled with a talent for crafting robust database structures. Bryan's passionate about driving social environment impact through his work. Having previously worked in affordable housing in Pakistan, I'd like to hear more about that, as a 2010 Acumen Fund Global Fellow. Away from the digital realm, Bryan loves travel. He's explored 134 countries, and that's a lot. So I think there's only a 200 odds. So you just got a ways to go, I think, but you're well on your way, more than most people. So welcome to the show, Bryan. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. The pleasure's all mine.
So we just had a chat before the show, and you sort of described yourself as a bit of a techno geek. So when did that all start, and why is, and then we're going to actually ask, so why is software important? Because there's a great quote by Mark Andreessen, and it's actually a long article called Why Software is Eating the World. We might talk more about that as well as a talking point. So how did the geekness start?
Well, I think it's a little bit intrinsic, but back when I was a kid, going to school, for me, I started learning code because of school presentations and writing, creating PowerPoint slides in class. I realized I could do cooler animations if I opened up Visual Basic and built some little tools and whatnot. And that's what got me started. But over the years, I've just become, someone that's very passionate about technology and who understands kind of the inner workings of how it's working under the hood, which makes it that much more exciting to learn more.
Yeah, so the reality is software is eating the world is actually quite true. I really do believe that, as in the reality is that you almost look anywhere and there's code running things, isn't there?
Absolutely. It's in your toaster now.
Yeah. So it's, and then we go right through to AI as well, which is basically, again, software.
Yep.
And the thing is too, a lot about this stuff, it's like a black box. To the average user, it's invisible, frankly. It just does stuff. And what I find fascinating is that most complex things like software, you give them a friendly user face and then they become easy to use. The Google search engine is a piece of software. It's full of algorithms that define it, and yet it's just do a simple input, right? Mm-hmm. Just a search box. What do you want to do if you want to get AI to do some work for you? You go and do a prompt and raise a question in ChatGPT now. But behind it lies some incredible power. So in terms of AI, how is AI impacting, the software industry, and why should people care?
Sure. So just to put it in the context of everything you were just talking about, software is really just a tool. And just like any tool that humans have been creating and using, going back to the caveman days, is we've been building tools that have made things that we do on an everyday basis easier to do. And so software is just doing that. It's helping humans become more efficient and become more powerful with their time. And ultimately, in the 21st century, where we're really focused on businesses and ROI and all of this kind of stuff, you can see that AI is enhancing the ability for businesses to gain more efficiency. And that, like, at the highest level is how I would describe what AI is doing. But it's just the next thing in a long line of a trend of things that have been coming for decades. So, for example, right now, any company in the world would not dream of operating without some computer, right? Maybe there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, you're going to need a computer. But there was a time when there were a lot of companies operating without computers, and the introduction of desktop computers and laptop computers, the companies that adopted those sooner and made that part of how they did business ultimately won out and beat out their competitors because their employees were able to do more with their time and become more efficient. And fast forward to looking at today's supply chains, for example, uh, there was a big movement with Lean Six Sigma and introducing ways to make the supply chain super efficient and reduce bottlenecks. And part of what I studied at UC Berkeley was industrial engineering and looking at supply chain management. And all of those tools and just-in-time engineering and stuff like that that people applied, these were philosophies, but again, it was just a tool to make the businesses more efficient and to reduce bottlenecks in your supply chain, and therefore empower the company that operated that supply chain to do more with their capital and increase their ROI. So at the end of the day, AI is just the same thing. It's another level of being more efficient, because really companies are just competing for attention, competing for trends, and trying to improve their efficiency and margins at the end of the day.
Yeah. You mentioned and using software is a tool, and it's right. So basically, with software, for example, you've got a problem in a supply chain. How can, and like lean manufacturing, for example, uh, suppose you go, well, how can I use software to write a program that will actually achieve that strategy or hypothesis that you need to do to implement that, isn't it? That's how you're really looking at it.
Yep, absolutely. And we've gotten to the era of data, and that's where AI and machine learning becomes so powerful. Is at the end of the day, machine learning and AI is really just simple algebra. You break everything down to ones and zeros, and it looks at that and is able to figure out the algebra, the weighted average formula, if you will, that will result in the highest ROI. Ultimately, that's what AI is doing, and what data engineers are doing is helping to tune the machine learning models so that it's paying attention to the right things. But yes, there is an element to machine learning that is a black box. Even the engineers don't quite understand what's exactly happening inside the neural network. But at the end of the day, all it's doing is it's taking vast amounts of very simple data, numeric data, or binary data, true or false for a certain category. And it's taking that and it's extrapolating trends. So I can give you an example because it's a Super Bowl week where if you ever look at sports analysts, they'll often do something where they do a bunch of data digging and they find some side-by-side comparison, and they're able to show a difference in performance. So they might show, I'm a huge 49ers fan, so they might show Brock Purdy, his performance against the blitz versus not against the blitz. And it's very different. He's very good against the blitz. And same with Patrick Mahomes, right? He's amazing in the playoffs. And then, I mean, he's very good all the time, but he just turns it on to another level in the playoffs. And you can see that statistically in the numbers. And so there's binary data there that you use to split. And so, with Brock Purdy, it would be, is he against the blitz or not? And so in my data, I would actually just have a true false for each row of data. Is this data against a blitz or not? And for Patrick Mahomes, is it in the playoffs or not? And with machine learning models, you're really just trying to feed it as many true false bits of data as you can, because that allows it to really find patterns. And it can absorb so much data that it can see patterns that us humans can't quite, start to wrap our heads around. Once you add too many plus signs into a calculator, you lose track of what you were even doing. But at the end of the day, it's just the same thing that you would do if you were to find, the right way to average out three different components to get the optimal outcome. But it's taking that across thousands of different data points that you're able to provide it, and it can learn how to predict the outcome. But at the end of the day, that's all it does.
Yeah.
Even ChatGPT, all it's doing is it's predicting what is the word that is most likely to come after the word that I just said. And it's predicting one word at a time. And that's how it's able to generate all of this custom content, is it's actually just predicting the next word. And it doesn't have the brain to think through what is the big picture. But that's why you need, data scientists and technology solutions providers to help kind of navigate this world of AI, so you can take advantage of it and make the most of it. Because there's a lot that can be done, but it needs to be structured properly. People kind of misunderstand and think that AI is just this all intelligent thing, but it really isn't. It's really actually, in a way, quite dumb. It's just very advanced at being able to cobble together all of this data and create a predictive outcome based on what you've provided it, so long as there's actual trends that show, something is more likely than something else.
Yeah. And the reality with AI, if it didn't have all this data, it would actually be quite dumb, because the more data it has, the smarter it is. And
Right.
also, it's also able to do it at scale globally and at speed, which is just amazing. Let's go back to the use of data, and we used it in sport. And there was I think it's a movie with Brad Pitt in it, which was called Moneyball.
Yes.
Right. And this was maybe the first time a coach had extensively used data to make a decision on how to actually coach a team, what players to get. They would go looking for a new player that no one thought was any good, but he used data to identify them. Did you watch the movie?
Yeah, I've seen that movie. Excellent though.
And you just go watch a basketball game right now, and the whole thing is, what's sitting behind that is data again, isn't it? So uh, essentially, software is almost coaching the team in a way that and recognizes patterns, just like you talked about before. And humans did have superpowers at pattern recognition, but being assisted by AI now, it takes it to a whole new level, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can observe, infinitely more observations. So humans, what we do really excellently, and the way that we've learned since we were, children or infants, is pattern recognition. I touch something that's hot and it hurts, right? And I noticed that I did that a few times, and then I realized I should just avoid touching the hot thing.
Yeah.
And but with AI, you're able to expose it to thousands and thousands of observations like that all at once. So it can start to notice much more nuanced things, and essentially would be able to tell you exactly the temperature at which it's too hot to touch. That as a human, I couldn't quite tell you that. I just know I've got a sixth sense that seems like it's probably too hot. I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah.
A good
So
example.
let's look at data a little bit more in terms of what's happened in technology history. We're not going to go back to the PC revolution, which is where I started my career in technology. I became a salesperson of personal computers back in the 1980s, and I really haven't left the technology ever since. I then got excited by the rise of the internet, and then the web browser, the Netscape browser, that was rose out of Mosaic, which was one of the first browsers. But the reality is that individual standalone computers, which is where I started my career, um, were initially networked to each other within a building, and then they eventually got connected to each other via another building. Then eventually they all got connected to the world via the internet that rose essentially in the 1990s, because the PC revolution was like the 1970s, really.
Yeah.
Okay. Where, Steve Jobs and Apple were duking it out with, IBM and PCs, and then Bill Gates and the software that rose. That Bill Gates actually sold software he didn't have to create, I think, the MS-DOS, I think it was at the time. But the reality is that AI wouldn't exist unless we had all this connectivity, would it?
That's true. I mean, you wouldn't even have the capacity to run some of these AI models without at the ones that are being run at scale without large scale server system infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just the number I came across the other day was that ChatGPT 3 got trained on I think, or 2 got trained on a few billion. The latest number I've heard, parameters, which is, like different data points, if you like. And today, I believe that ChatGPT and Bard, which is now about to be called Gemini, I believe, rebranding by Google, these big large language models, LLMs, and let's just make an acronym make sense to everyone. Basically, large language models need lots of large data. And the number today I've heard is that ChatGPT 4 is being trained on 1 trillion plus parameters now. It's
Yep.
like a number that we as humans can hardly, imagine, can we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing that's certainly in looking at it as well is that generally any technology that is complicated, it starts to make sense to the average bear human when we give it a friendly user interface. So that friendly user interface, for example, was basically Windows for the PC. Then
Mhm.
it was the browser interface where you typed in a search term for Netscape, then became Google, that different variations of it. Then basically ChatGPT on social media, again, you had an easy place to actually engage with the world of connection globally on social media. Then we added, and ChatGPT, even though the technology was there, was given a friendly face. It was just a prompt box that
Yep.
everyone could just type into. So it's not until technology is given a human-friendly interface that it really takes off, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you're hinting at the fact that ChatGPT is a user interface, because that's the way I see it. Absolutely, it is the new user interface. We came out with laptops and then mobile phones, and so suddenly you needed apps that were geared towards a mobile phone. But now we have this possibility to have integrated live chat that's specialized to your own topics, built into any product. And it's not going to replace the need for a mobile visual user interface, but it's a new place where people can interact with your business and ask it questions. But this is where I think everyone kind of gets in trouble, where they get too focused on just the interface and not on why people are using it in the first place, or what people are really interested in. And you mentioned our motivation driven design concept before, and the thought that we have there is that when you have UX and UI, UX is the way that an interface is navigated. It's called user experience. Is it intuitive and easy to use? And ChatGPT is very easy to use. And then user interface is how does it look? Is it beautiful? Does it seem flashy, and or is it simple and modern looking? And ChatGPT is definitely simple and modern looking. But what so many people miss in their products is what I call which is user motivation. And it's looking at, why do people want to engage in your product in the first place? Because just because something is easy to use and looks nice and modern doesn't mean that I care at all about using it.
Mm.
And so as people are starting to think about how they integrate something like ChatGPT as a new user interface for their product, what they really need to do first, and this is what I spend a lot of my time helping people do, is step back and look at why are your users even here, and what are they really motivated by, both intrinsically and extrinsically, and how do we give them that extra motivation to go through the process and take the actions and steps that you want them to take that are going to hit your strategic goals as a business, or that'll initiate the processes that end up leading towards your strategic goals. So it's one of the exciting things about ChatGPT and AI is that it opens up new possibilities for greater efficiency and for new user interfaces and new ways of working and interacting with your customers, your users, or whoever, and all of that. But at the end of the day, it still doesn't solve the motivation problem that all of us humans are faced with. And that's something that everyone really needs to keep in mind when they're thinking about these things. Is it's not a silver bullet. It's a very powerful enhancement to what you might already have. But you still need to really hone in on why people are there and how do you keep them coming back, keep them kind of excited. And
Yeah.
that's what motivation's all about.
Yeah. And so motivation comes very much from the bigger the problem, the bigger the motivation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or or the better the pleasure, the better the motivation as well. In other words, why do people use an app, for example? Um, and if it's about money, if it's about sex, if it's about finance, if it's about happiness, um, they tend to it it gives people a pretty powerful intrinsic human motivation, let me say. So now I'm going to lean into, you mentioned UX, user experience and user interface. Have you had a look at the new GPT store that ChatGPT has launched? And it launched with 3 million apps, by the way, and also, by the way, a lot of them are crap. And they are, some of the apps in there are, and I'm about to write an article on it because it's just fabulous. Out of these 3 million apps, there's going to be great ones, there's going to be medium ones, and there's going to be crap ones. I saw a software or user interface, user experience expert give a review of what he thought of the GPT store. Now, you're a software engineer, very much about user experience 360. What do you think of the GP store interface?
Mhm. So I think it's very interesting. It makes sense for ChatGPT to open up a store because they're not going to build out these hyper custom iterations of their own product for specific use cases that other people have. And that's sort of their model, is they want to be the platform. They don't necessarily want to own every vertical. And that's why everything's very open source with them. And so it makes sense for ChatGPT to do that. Now, the tricky part, as you mentioned, is that some people are really just using it as a way to put a wrapper around what they already do. While you were talking about that, I was just thinking about how right after 2020, Zoom suddenly came out with the Zoom app store. And all of a sudden everybody had a Zoom app, and it was really just kind of some sort of wrapper around a small piece of what they do in the Zoom interface. And in some ways, I think that some people use these app stores as a way to just increase their organic search visibility, because if you're able to get into the ChatGPT store, someone might discover the rest of your product through that store rather than through a Google search or whatnot, because Google searches are SEO is highly competitive, right? It's very hard to break to the top of the rankings. But when the App Store on iOS came out, App Store optimization became a big thing, and it was very possible to get to the top of App Store rankings early on. It's much harder now, but it was early on very easy to get up there when you couldn't get on Google. And so some of these stores are opportunities for that. But you're spot on that out of the 3,000 apps, how many of them are
3
really
million.
3 million. How many of them are really enhancing
That's right.
users' experiences? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, one of them was find a new girlfriend, for example, or a hot girlfriend, and another one was um, there's a one with one's called Jesus, which is basically write in a tone that Jesus would write about. The list goes on. It's very, very funny, and but some people want to be connected to Jesus via an app, I suppose. So that's really good. So, what do you think about the pace of change for you? You're working in an industry now that I think even software industry would be in the middle of a lot of change as well, wouldn't it? Um, so how much change is there in software, and why should people care about that? Like an app that was good 2 years ago is now crap today. So what's the pace of change like in the software industry? And of course, it's being very much impacted by AI. Tell us about that.
Well, it's one of the very exciting things about being in this industry is just keeping up with what's next and what people are excited about. As you recall, NFTs was the huge rage there for most of 2022 and 2021. People were looking for anyone who could have blockchain or NFT coding experience. And now it's very focused on LLMs and building tools with LLMs. So it does keep things interesting for us. It keeps us on our toes to be studying and learning new technologies. But I would say that as time has gone on, and because I've been in this industry and space for well over a decade, I you start to see the patterns in these changes, and they start to all sort of be the same. It's not as revolutionary, to your point that in some ways ChatGPT is just another interface. For example, I could go onto Amazon and I could search for a product in the search bar, but before I know it, or maybe they already have it, maybe it's one of those 3 million apps, I can just ask a ChatGPT. But at the end of the day, it's just a way for me to find the product that I need. And when it comes to implementation details, of course, each of these is an evolution of each other. But after you've learned new ones, it starts to just become very standard.
Yeah.
That was something I had to kind of figure out how to explain to people because uh, back in my earlier days, I was really focused on iPhone apps, and people would ask if I had experience with a particular Apple SDK. Have you done a Maps application, or have you done, this a store kit application? And at some point, it became, well, they're all kind of the same. They serve very different features, but how you use them is fundamentally the same. And you have to keep in mind that's probably going to continue because these tools are being built by software developers for software developers. So we kind of all approach them in a similar way and create similar interfaces, just like you're accustomed to having a login and a logout button on every product you use. Us developers have a number of things that we're accustomed to being able to leverage when interacting with a new third-party tool or technology that we're sort of expecting. And I'll spare you all the details of those things, but you see it if you hop from developer documentation from one product to another. You'll start to see it's all kind of similar looking, and when you look at it from a developer perspective, it's more about learning what is possible with what is new, and then the implementation itself just comes down to practice and trying it out, and
Mm.
why developers are still around.
Yeah. So you talked about that in your early days, you were very much into mobile apps.
Yep.
Um, and mobile apps is where you develop something for the mobile phone to go into the Apple store, the Android store. But the software that you used was basically not part of Apple or Android. It was basically you wrote an app and then had to meet the requirements of the store to actually get it to be placed there, isn't it? Whereas ChatGPT is, the GPT store, as it's called, is basically there's the store where the platform you're using is the coder, isn't it? Is that correct?
How do you mean the
Well,
platform you're
you use ChatGPT to put a wrapper on something and solve a problem, and that sits within the GPT store. That's what I'm saying. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you're using their underlying engine,
Yes.
but I would say in the same way that yes, you're correct. The mobile app itself, the code is not written on the mobile phone, but the entire experience you're building for is the mobile phone. The app
Yeah.
itself is sort of useless outside of the mobile phone. There are, common cross-platform coding languages that you can use now to write code that you write once and it'll compile and publish for an iOS app or an Android app. But that is, well, at this point, I wouldn't say it's relatively new, but there used to be a time when you couldn't do that, and you had to write code and compile it natively for iOS and write completely separate code and write and compile it natively for Android. And in other words, the code that you wrote couldn't be used anywhere else. And it's really only for that mobile app. Whereas, and it's sort of similar like this. If you write code for ChatGPT, it's going to be for a ChatGPT implementation.
Yeah. So one thing you did mention, which I found actually hadn't thought of it this way, but it's true, is that you would have created a mobile app so you get visibility in the app because it's easier to rank number one or number 10 as opposed to competing globally on Google search. Uh, so I started writing back in 2009, and back then it was just through blunt force trauma, not any technical SEO skills. I just wrote a shitload of content and I ended up ranking and getting a lot of organic traffic. Today, there's many much more complicated, more algorithms. So, but being found online, like appearing on page one and especially position one, is like opening you up to tens of thousands of visits per month just for one keyword. Um, so let's say you've got a client, they're trying to solve a problem, they want more visibility, for example. Would you recommend they maybe do a GPT store app? So, and if they did, uh, how would you do that? And how quickly could you do that?
So for all of those questions, it does really depend on what their underlying business is.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's where I'm always going to start is looking at, their business, their strategy, their financial goals, and the resources that they have at their disposal, so we can kind of evaluate that with against other options.
Yep.
But with that being said, let's assume that we determine that building out a chat GPT application would be great for their brand, but that there isn't really much behind it in terms of the use cases. Because if there was, then I would say we invest heavily in that. But if there isn't, then it is possible certainly to spin up a very simple application that leverages ChatGPT and basically is leveraging it out of the box without very much custom information.
Mhm.
And you could do that really fast in order to do whatever it takes to meet the criteria to publish that app in the ChatGPT store. Now, if they have 3 million apps already, it may be hard to break
Yeah.
through. It was early
Visibility
days.
is going to be hard. That's part of the problem because it took Apple, I believe, 5 years to reach 1 million apps.
Right.
ChatGPT opened with 3 million apps after announcing their developer path to creating an app, I think, in October, which is, let's do the math, I think it's 4 months.
Right. So I'll tell you a secret of how ChatGPT works under the hood. When you are messaging with ChatGPT on their website, you feel like it's a chat. right? You send a message and it replies to your message. But actually, when you press send, it's going to that chat model and it's saying, hey, here's a user. This user has asked you these questions already, and here's what you told them before. And now they asked you this. And what do you reply to that? So it's called prompt engineering. It provides the entire history of the conversation to the model in order for it to generate the next response. And so you can also practice this when you use GPT. If you're a little bit more of an advanced user, you're not just typing to it, you can say things like, please give me your responses in the style of, my favorite is to ask for it in the style of a pirate. And you can give it a series of instructions and a series of rules and inform those as your header and then send the message. And what you'll get back will adhere to that. And so a simple app, if you wanted to make a simple, pirate GPT app, you could just make an app that all it does is exactly the same as ChatGPT, but it inserts at the top of every message it sends, remember to respond as if you're in the style of a pirate. And suddenly you'll have a ChatGPT that feels like you coded something amazing, but all you did was just added one instruction that goes with every message. And so I believe that that's probably what a lot of these products are doing. Obviously, many of them are connecting you to their underlying services, which is a little bit more complicated, but it's something that you can do relatively easily.
Yeah. So let's say you develop software for someone. I'm sure I think you've done a lot of software as a service type products, have you before or not? Is that an area you specialize in?
Yeah, absolutely. Our clients usually are making apps or websites that are software as a service sites or apps.
Yeah. So, and that then on top of that, and so basically that becomes a paid app, doesn't it, or a monthly subscription to use that. So this is what I'm thinking, and in that maybe you go, well, I'm going to create an app on ChatGPT that's free because that enables people to maybe familiarize themselves with the company. It's a simple application of software as a service, which is freemium, free,
Mhm.
whereas the software as a service is a premium version of that, for example. In other words, you're getting them in the door, making a small commitment using an app. So we go from the freemium model's been used now for decades on the net, hasn't it? So you get people to use something for free and they go, oh, you want to do, X and you want to do Y and you want to do A and you want to do B. Oh, sorry, that's now $30 a month.
Right.
So could you use ChatGPT to actually be the bait to get them to software as a service subscription?
It could be, but again, I would want to look at what the company's strategy is and their financial goals, because on the other hand, ChatGPT is more expensive in terms of pay per use. You have to pay for however many tokens you use, which is basically how many words are
Yeah.
in the responses. It can be cheaper to operate or to open up access to your primary existing services, so your mobile app or your website and whatnot, because in those cases you're running a server that makes those applications available, that doesn't really have a very significant incremental cost for one additional user, whereas one additional user on a GPT platform might actually introduce real cost to your business. So
Yeah.
what I would consider would be, in some ways, seeing if the experience of your product is enhanced through GPT, and then offering that as one of the services that you get as part of the premium model. Um, but again, it's very dependent on the strategy, and it can be a neat way to get attention, because Maybe someone is excited to try something out because of the novelty of the GPT type user experience.
Yeah.
That'll make it easier to get people on board. So those are the kinds of problems that I love to tackle and help people walk through every day.
Cool. So part of your approach is motivation-driven design and process. In other words, why would someone use that software, for example? And then the other question would be, are we solving a big enough problem? So do you ever talk to a client and advise them not to do it because you don't think it's a big enough problem? There's not enough motivation for the users to actually engage with your software? Have you said bad idea?
I try to do it very gracefully, but yes, there's been many times where I've had to kind of help a client see the risk with that approach, whatever it is that they're proposing, where uh, perhaps you're opening yourself up to a lot of development work that is based on sort of a hunch that people will appreciate that. And part of what we do to de-risk those things is help people find simpler ways to test the core hypothesis of what they're assuming is motivating people in their application and whatnot. So it's all about streamlining and finding ways to simplify the actual user experience to test if people are going to be interested in the kind of the key offering that you're bringing to the table for them,
Mhm.
and then take it from there. Because a lot of times people really want to overinvest and go big before really proving out the demand, which there are times, and there's always a time and a place for different things, and it really does depend on the context of the industry and other competitors and so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
uh, sometimes it's really important to just focus on uh, something that you have a question mark about, and putting out ways, the simplest, cheapest way of testing that hypothesis. All of entrepreneurship, all of business technology solutions, it's all a science experiment with a hypothesis that you want to
Yeah.
prove.
So that sounds like to me that you would be taking an approach within your general approach would be a minimal viable product or an MVP approach as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And a true MVP. So many people, that's become such a catchword that clients just use it all the time now as what they think of as uh, their first version. But in my mind, version one is really when you've gotten to the point where you have everything that you want built in your initial idea. Whereas an MVP could be a shell compared to version one, but
Yeah.
oftentimes takes a
Yeah.
while to navigate that discussion.
Yeah. Okay. So what's maybe some of the most interesting software projects you've taken on, and you can reveal names or you don't have to, but like you go on, this is batshit crazy and it worked. Do you have any examples of those sort of projects that you could tell us about?
Uh, I've worked on a lot of fun projects. There was one that I absolutely love because the guy, pitched it, and it it just it just made a lot of sense that this we worked on this. By the way, the context is that we were building this during COVID, and what it was is it's called the Trivia Bar, thetriviabar.com. And basically the idea was you wanted to be able to replicate the Trivia Bar experience, but with actual cash prizes kind of thing, but remotely online. And that was a very, very fun product to build out, where
Right.
basically there's a whole series of trivia games. Everything's real time, so there was a lot of technological challenges. We had to put in protections against cheating and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
But it was a very fun product, and it's one that I'm very proud of that's out there.
So how well did that work?
The business took off.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but uh, there were there were lots of very large cash prize games that were going on with that one.
Right. Okay. Anything else that comes to mind apart from trivia?
I'm trying to think which ones I'm able to spare about. Um, there is one that was one that I'm very excited about that's actually we're working on some interesting stuff in the realm of ChatGPT for that is in alignment with my focus on impact and my time in Pakistan, like we discussed,
Yes.
is Impact Wave, which is a social media application for influencers that's focused on collaborating and sharing ways to have a greater impact in the world.
Okay.
And uh, it's a kind of a meeting place for where people can discuss based on a very variety of different topics, ranging from uh, the wellness of the ocean to an environmental concern to mental health concerns to how women are treated in different parts of the world and so on. And so you can kind of focus in on whatever uh, area you are interested in and share stories and tips and tricks. And uh, it's very much like a social media application, but its user base is highly focused on the world of impact.
So, because the term impact investing is used quite regularly, so it is a tool to help the the investors, or is it to help people who want to invest at that in a fund or something that makes an impact? Is it a two-sided marketplace? What is it?
Well, it would be very helpful for investors. It's not directly targeting investors, but more for just
Research.
anyone that's interested in impact, the entire community that would be interested in nonprofits or any kind of impact-oriented causes or charities.
Right. Okay, maybe a couple of last questions. One's going to be is what brings you the greatest joy? Because I like to ask that of my guests. In other words, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do tomorrow? Okay, that's so I can answer that. That's been my last question. But in the meantime, has the software's gone through so much change? It used to be, like it costs you millions of dollars to develop an app or software now. In terms of productivity for software now, where are we up to? And in other words, if I'm a business owner and I want to solve a problem using software, whether it's internal or offer a product, what's happened in pricing over the last decade or so?
Are you referring to how much it costs to develop a product?
Well, that's how that's like saying how long's a piece of string. I understand that, but has it dropped enormously the cost of developing software as opposed to 10 years ago? And is it going to get cheaper?
I would say that it's simultaneously a yes and a no. It's a yes in the sense that if you were trying to build the same thing that you were trying to build 10 years ago, you could probably do it so much cheaper and quicker. But the difference is that the expectations have expanded. And
Right.
so what people want included in a product has grown tremendously. And in some ways, it's almost that the cost of creating products has remained constant, but what can be included for that cost has grown exponentially, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's getting cheaper, but as a result, people are investing in the new cutting edge things. So for example, we spent a lot of time today talking about ChatGPT. Well, that's starting to become a thing that I'm seeing as just part of the requirements
Yes.
for several people's ideas. And obviously it it's a whole new feature, a whole new user interface that you have to build for. And the overall cost of products, probably what we're charging to build out a product 5 years from now is probably not going to be that different from what we're charging today,
Mhm.
adjusted for inflation. But we're going to have Chat GPT interface as a very standard thing that we always do that was never part of it today.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so I suppose for example, you develop software, and then someone wanted a mobile app to actually be able to use it on their mobile phone as well. And then now we're going, not only do we want that done, now we also want ChatGPT app developed for us as well. So, like you're saying, the expectation has almost exploded over time, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, there used to be you used to have to write iOS and Android apps completely separately, two code bases. Now you can use Flutter, React Native. Now Microsoft just came out with Maui, which I've been dabbling into. Those are all things that you can use to write more cross-platform, where you can write for web, iOS, and Android all in one code base.
Oh,
So
okay.
it dramatically shrinks the amount of work that's necessary. But then you add in new interfaces as well. So
Yeah.
it'll always continue to kind of expand like that.
Cool. So, where's the future going for Goldfish? Your company, software development. Where do you see yourself going in the next 10 years in the software world, and helping businesses identify the motivation to create some software to either sell software as a service? Where do you see Goldfish going? What are you leaning into that you see as the future for software in your particular niche, which I think is more in the software as a service area? Is that correct?
Well, we don't offer software as a service ourselves.
Right.
We offer development services and consulting services, but most of the products that we build, I would classify as software as a service products that we're building on behalf of someone else. So really, where we're focused is in the motivation-driven design aspect of things and the 360-degree consulting piece, because I think that development itself is becoming increasingly commoditized, and it's very easy, to find someone who could write code that does a certain thing. But what is different about Goldfish is that we're bringing solutions to you and helping you build something that's designed for human use. Also, as you see all these technology trends emerge, come and go, what's the constant is the user, and even the constant across different industry applications. So people often ask, how can you kind of jump from working on something like the trivia bar to a social media application to an e-commerce application in three different industries? And the reality is that I see all of these products from the lens of, we are building something that is going to be used by humans, and that humans need to feel some sort of attachment and motivation to use those products. And so we're really focused on that lens of things. And hopefully over the next 10 years, we'll build out a bigger team of consultants to guide our clients through the work that's necessary in order to enhance their products, and obviously have a solid development team to back that up.
Right. So does that mean you're going to be hiring more neuroscientists?
Oh yeah, we'll be hiring. We've got open job applications at the moment too.
Okay. Because neuroscientists were used and continue to be used in social media, because social media is designed to be addictive. So do you design your apps to be healthily addictive for users?
That's something that I'm very focused on in motivation terms. We call it kind of, are you white hat or black hat? So when you are doing things that are, very kind of gimmicky in the sense of a limited time offer, if you don't do this by this time, you create scarcity, or you create unpredictability for people, or this idea of they might lose out on something. Those are really powerful decision-making motivators that get people to take action right now, but they are not sticky motivators. It doesn't keep you engaged long term.
Right.
So, uh, it's really important to make sure that people see sort of the bigger purpose, the bigger meaning, and then providing users with opportunities for creativity, and for a sense of accomplishment and purpose. Those are the types of things that really motivate people longer term. And it's possible to kind of apply those principles to, you know, applications that are really sort of focused on just everyday usage. That's what Waze was all about. Waze, not only is it, a helpful tool, but it presents everything as this, epic battle against the monster that is traffic that we are all collaboratively helping out to solve. So it created this sense of purpose to people that, they should use Waze because using Waze gives back to Waze, and we're all going to, gain efficiency together.
So
And so I
what's
try.
what's Waze and how's that spelt? Is that an
Oh,
application, a gaming
that's
software?
it's a driving routing application, competes with Google Maps. Actually, Google Maps bought it out, so I guess it no longer competes. It feeds data into Google Maps now, but
Brought the competition out as a populist.
yeah, when it came out, it competed with Google Maps, and it's driving directions, and it's where you report things like, oh, there's a policeman with their radar gun right here, so slow down when you get close to here, and
Hmm.
oh, there's an accident right here. And uh it a lot of those features and that kind of data people take for granted now, but when Waze came out, I think it was 2007, 8, or 9, something around then, it was super revolutionary.
Yeah.
But the idea is really that they created a sense of unity and purpose for all of their users.
Hmm.
And so, yes, it did create, I guess you could say, addiction, but not in the mental health negative way,
Yeah.
more in the I'm part of something way, which is very positive and makes people feel good about themselves for their contributions and feel like they're part of society. And so it's kind of mimicking the things that have made social groups work really well offline, in the offline world, for centuries, right? Is when you feel like you're giving back to the community.
Hmm.
That's going to make you feel good, and as humans, we like to do that, and we'll come back and do more.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's this 50 shades of grey from white to black if we want to go, in terms of motivations, from scammy and spammy to being authentic and good motivation. So you almost like you want to create an addiction for good habits, maybe such as healthy eating, rather than, taking drugs, for example, or drinking too much, alcohol. Okay, here we are. Last question. I've just very curious about, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do tomorrow? What would bring you joy and satisfaction? I'm curious about what that is for you.
Yeah, if I had all the money in the world, I would say that very little would change about my day-to-day life. But what I would start to do is I would start to take that and invest in building organizations that are helping with international development. That's an area that I'm super passionate about with all the travels that I've done.
Mm,
I'm very interested in uh, what is similar about humans around the world. I think, actually, to be honest, part of my interest in motivation and in human-centered design is the fact that humans across the world in all of my travels are very similar, and people that are poor, that are really at the bottom of the pyramid, if you will, are facing similar challenges. And what I would want to do is set up organizations that, through one way or another, are providing jobs to people in poorer areas of the world.
yeah,
Because ultimately, I've come to the opinion that uh, the best way to alleviate poverty, to make the world kind of a better place for those that are struggling, is to provide them jobs. It's not the only way, and there's a lot of other things that charities and nonprofits can do to really help. But ultimately, a paycheck is what gets people into a better place pretty quickly.
yeah. So really what you're saying is don't buy people fish, teach them to fish.
Yeah, yeah, and get them a job on the fishing boat.
That's right. So if they can fish, they can go on the fishing boat and get a job. So
Yeah.
Brian, thank you very much for your insights. I've learned a lot today, and I looked a bit under the hood of the software industry. I play in technology, but I'm crap at programming. I'm just wired that way, so I chose something else within the technology space. So thank you very much for showing your wisdom and expertise and telling us your stories. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate talking today and the opportunity.
Okay. And all the best with Goldfish in the future.
Thank you.
And I have a rumor that goldfish have very short memories. So where did the name come from?
Oh my goodness. The name came the name came as children. My brother and I used to make home videos, and they were just silly home videos. But we were always eating goldfish crackers in every video. We named our video company Goldfish Productions. And so at some point I was trying to put a name that meant something to me, forward for this company, and just kept thinking about goldfish and all the fun that I had doing that, and wanted to bring that kind of spirit to what we do.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to have a name with a story, isn't it?
Yes.
Thanks, Brian, for sharing that, and look forward to maybe catching up with New York one day. In fact, I'm heading off there in about a month and a half. So,
oh, great.
yeah. So
Well, do come back.
I might say I'm in Harlem. What's a good restaurant? Come join me for a beer.
That would be great. We can swap more stories.
Okay, fantastic, Brian. Okay, thank you very much.